go over here. Hello? Okay. Yeah, I'm going on this side because I noticed in my last talk it's really unflattering being filmed from the side and I'm quite vain. So, this... honest. Okay, I apologise for this slightly glib title, slightly, very. I have my reasons. Do I kick you now? Some of you will have seen me before. I did a VideoBrains talk a couple of months ago. I'll do my usual introduction for those who don't realise how famous I am yet. I work at Better Games. We do interactive fiction, and it's best known for Fallen London and Sunless Sea. Fallen London is a free-to-play online and Apple app, and Sunless Sea is a more normal video game. And Jake should have Steam keys.
Yeah, we're going to give them away after this talk, but it was a surprise.
Just checking. I work as Better's narrative editor. Among things I'm responsible for includes polishing turns of phrase, checking narrative continuity, and growling at writers for American spellings. You can find me on Twitter as Babelfish Wars because I'm a total hitchhiker's geek. This talk is about me encouraging you. I want you to show people stuff when it's ugly and imperfect and unfinished and you know there's a shit ton of things wrong with it, and when it's properly scary to show people. I think you should show your people your work early on in the creative process and then finish it. Finishing it is also important, but that's a different talk. I'm going to talk about who you should show and how to survive feedback. And in an effort to demonstrate my point, there's a lot more I could have done to improve this talk. It is finished, and I have practiced it a little bit, but it's not pretty and it's certainly not polished. I'm going to blink strangely at him each time I need to talk. Why should you show people stuff that you know you could do better if you just put a bit more time into it? Surely showing people at this stage is a complete waste of time because they're going to pick up on things you already know about. Nope. What follows is extrapolated from what I've observed about words and the people who write them, but I'll bet it's true for creative projects in general. Your work might not be as bad as you fear, in which case polishing and honing without showing someone is obviously a waste of time. The difference between work people have shown me that's nearly ready and ready is minimal, and there's no point polishing a piece before you've had someone cast fresh eyes on it. The amount of feedback I give is basically the same. You also can't judge how bad your rough work is by comparing it to that of others. Don't be put off by other people's unpolished stuff seeming really, really good, because most people are lying. People are liberal with the truth about the readiness of their project. Genuine concept art, for example, is almost never made public. There are exceptions, but few, but for most companies, they always polish it up before releasing it. And if your work is as bad as you think it is, it might not be for the reasons you suspect. If you've not spotted a glaring plot hole by the time you're at the polishing stage, chances are you aren't going to spot it. There may be a usability issue, but since you've been immersed in the system you've designed, you may be completely comfortable with it. And you'll probably be so focused on things you're convinced are problems that you won't actually spot the real issues. So, showing people early doesn't waste time, it saves it. And how? You don't get to nearly finished before finding out you have to do a great deal of reworking. You end up having to redo less. It might be easier to change things. If you've added fewer elements to a design, you'll have fewer dependencies. You might at least be less emotionally attached to them if you continue to labour, tweaking and adjusting for days and days. You might, but I can hope that it would be a bit easier. So if it's something very techy, the more people you show early, hopefully the more devices you're testing it on. For game design, early access showed us combat in Sunless Sea just wasn't fun. If we'd done it later, towards actual launch, we couldn't have changed this, but because in early access, we could fix it, move the launch date, and it's a much better game as a result. And for content, showing a selection of people means they'll flag different things. Someone might notice you've not included any female characters. Someone else might realise the player catches a glimpse of their pale face in a mirror, and the player might not be white, and so on. So, getting feedback can also help you avoid burnout. Working on something for prolonged periods without showing people can be dangerous, and it's not just for the quality of the work. No creative work is perfect. It's very easy to convince yourself something isn't ready to show others, just not quite yet. So you can end up reworking and polishing over and over, and in doing so, force yourself into creative exhaustion, doubting the work and doubting yourself. By making yourself show people work you know is not ready, you might escape this trap. I think this is particularly important because creative types are not notorious for practicing self-care. The risk of burnout and the need for self-care are relevant at almost any stage of a project. This isn't an overall solution, but it might help. Creative types are an odd breed. To get good at their art, they need to be arrogant enough to share it to others, but humble enough to accept feedback. They need to take criticism on board and work upon both the work and their own skills, and yet also believe their work is worth exhibiting. While there are exceptions, many decent authors I know manage to possess a tremendous ego whilst simultaneously being extremely fragile. Creative work can be an extension of the self, and feedback about it can feel like feedback about the person who made it. Criticism can be crushing, but without work it will never get better. So, you have to be brave. You have to risk finding out your work isn't great. Sometimes not showing people your work can be a matter of pride or fear, and nothing about the project itself. Till your work is revealed, it's in a state of uncertainty. It might not be a failure. It might not be poor. It might even, dare you risk thinking it, be good. You might be good. Or not. Outside judgment might justify all your fears and insecurities. You still have to be brave. I don't just edit, I write a little bit. And I've been upset by feedback in the past. I've allowed criticism of work I've done to feel like criticism of me. It's drawn out my secret belief that I'm just not good enough, that my work isn't worthwhile, that I'm both arrogant and ignorant, and how dare I? You don't need any more internal dialogue here, it descends into swearing. Let's just agree, I know it sucks. So, many more experienced creators do not come across as fragile, but this is probably a combination of them having learned to handle their first instinctive reaction to feedback, them knowing that they cannot show their reaction publicly, and because they've done enough work, they just have to get on regardless. Of course, there are those arrogant tossers who can create, hear criticism, and not be made temporarily to feel utterly worthless. And yet they're still able to take criticism on board and improve, and I'm not remotely jealous of them. The utter bastards. I had to authorise a word with them. Jake here, he didn't let me use it. So, why else would you ask people to comment on your rough, unfinished work? Feedback can help you make progress. Hang on. No, I'm skip slides, you can see. This takes me on to the next reason to show people work. That you know it's a bit bad. You already know it's bad. You'll get a chance to get used to hearing that stuff you made isn't good, which is one of those painful things, like a series of tough workouts where all you can think is, I hate this is awful, and then suddenly you're fitter and lifting heavier weights, and that was what seemed shit in hindsight, maybe okay, wasn't that bad. You'll get better at taking criticism and be able to learn from it faster. So, why else should you get asked people to comment on your rough, unfinished work? Feedback can help you make progress, and it doesn't even have to be good feedback to do so. Good feedback can be useful, encouraging, reassuring, ego-smoothing, and challenging at the same time. It can also tell you to let something go, that it works, that you can refocus your attention. Maybe you've been struggling to improve something because you didn't need to work on it. But even bad feedback can provide impetus. Obviously, it's hard to react to, this is crap, positively. But I'd suggest, fuck you, I'll prove it's not. It's one response. Feedback can also help you get started. I was DMing someone on Twitter panicking about this talk. I've just got this title, it's probably boring, will it even be useful? They replied, yes, it's useful. These are some of the things I've had to learn the hard way. Maybe you can incorporate them so that others don't have to suffer. I got a nudge to get on with it and material to bounce off, so bonus. Feedback can also help you finish because it can give you a sense of proportion. If you polish and work in an echo chamber, if you're anything like me, there's a risk you can keep on going till you believe yourself stuck, give up in a fit of frustration, and sometimes delete everything you've done in a self-pitying rage. Maybe you're not like me. Finally, being brave enough to show unfinished work can help others. You can inspire and educate them, and they can learn from both your successes and mistakes. And that's a general good thing because we can get a lot more interesting work out there that we can all improve on and learn from. Next. So, who should you show? It's totally okay to show friends and family, if what you're wanting is uncritical feedback that risks being nice rather than useful. That said, it is worth showing them a game and watching them. It could be invaluable. Regardless of what they say, seeing where they struggle, where they get frustrated, can be very useful. Just factor in they're likely to take longer to rage quit than a complete stranger would. Of course, some friends or family may have relevant experience or know how to give useful feedback. I'm going to see if I can mention my mum in every talk. My mum was an English teacher. If I show her some writing and somehow manage to convince her that I won't get upset, she'll give me genuinely useful comments. Of course, it's never as harsh as it should be, but maybe that's my arsehole brain talking. You know your friends, you know your family, you know you. You should know whether someone can give you robust feedback that is designed to improve your work rather than your esteem. But not all friends are created equal. If someone might harbour envy and might give you feedback that speaks to your doubts, I'd suggest not giving them the opportunity to. You also know you. Critical feedback hurts. Will you be able to forgive someone who's honest with you? If not, ask professionals or people with whom you don't have a relationship you need. You also need to be aware of the skill set of the person you're asking. A voracious reader might be able to tell you whether or not they found a character convincing or whether they felt that something was a plot hole, but they probably won't be able to give you a detailed analysis of the use of genre tropes or stylistic feedback. If a person is computer canny, but not familiar with games, they might offer coding suggestions or design ideas that could be perfect for something else, but is at complete odds with good game design. If they don't understand the complete complex interactions between design and narrative, for example, their feedback might be well-meaning, but demoralising. And this is a Neil Gaiman quote. I think it's applicable to more than just writing. When people tell you something's wrong or doesn't work for them, they are almost always right. When they tell you exactly what they think is wrong and how to fix it, they are almost always wrong. Of course, this is less the case if you're asking someone highly experienced in that area. But do look at actual experience, not self-declared expertise. Confidence is incredibly persuasive. If you can get feedback from people in the same industry as the work you're doing, great. You may have to pay for it, but then you should be guaranteed a degree of honesty you would not otherwise receive. Getting paid liberates me from the social obligation of being nice. I'm not a nice editor. Alternatives are attend events like this, find people with similar projects, swap feedback, go to game jams, make contacts, attend meetups, and follow up on connections made at cons. But even if you're paying for it, unless you're paying by the hour, be respectful of other people's time. In industries like this, people are passionate, not just about their own work, but about encouraging others. If someone refuses to help you, thank them, then process the rejection in private. If someone agrees to help you, please don't send them the equivalent of a 300,000 word fantasy tome and expect them to read the whole thing, let alone comment on it. This is things that happen. Send them a chapter. Give them one level. Point at a specific design you are hoping for comment on. And don't be hurt or dwell on whether you said the wrong thing if someone is eager then suddenly goes quiet. They may just have entered a busy period and can't keep juggling all the things. People in this industry are often working 78 to 80-hour weeks, despite there being a drive to cut down on it. People need time with friends, family, and time away from games to recharge. Other people will not all have been respectful in their requests for help, so those you approach will be wary. You have to go above and beyond to compensate. And remember, you shouldn't ask a doctor to do a quick examination as a favour, so think twice before asking a game designer to check out your work. This isn't do not do it, just make sure you approach them appropriately and give them room to say no without feeling awkward. So, people have said stuff about your work. It might be wonderful, it might be horrible, but you won't be happy because of human nature. If people have nothing but praise, well, obviously they're wrong. They're not being honest. They're just being nice. Regardless of where the comments range from, this is amazing, but for this little thing, to how dare you make me waste time on this shit, you'll hook onto the negatives. Praise is nice, but it's the buts that stick with you and make you doubt your abilities. So, sometimes it's a good idea to be unavailable when feedback comes in. Be busy. More reasoned reactions always come in slower. This way, the collated feedback will be more balanced when you get to it. Certainly, never react to it immediately, either in responding to it or implementing it. Remarks might be incorrect or unfair, but regardless, your instinctive reaction will often be wrong. Have a prepared response. Thank people, so you'll collate it to work through later, and this applies to both positive and negative feedback. And before you do anything with it, categorise what you've been told. Split out bugs and technical issues and specific problems from feeling-based responses. Don't dismiss the latter, but if people are annoyed by bugs, they'll be hypersensitive to everything else. So, What are the downsides of showing people work while it's still shitty and unpolished? People might nick your idea. I'm putting this first in the list as I want you to forget it and focus on the points that follow. I think it's minimal risk and often used as an excuse not to show anyone. Yes, people can rip off your work, but this is either highly unlikely or they'd rip off your finished project anyway. It's a big deal, but it's not something that should result in work being done in the dark. It means choosing who you show carefully, and it means being aware of your legal rights to your work, which you should make yourself aware of anyway. There is also a known thing where if someone tells someone else their story idea, they almost never go on to write it. They've got the kick from sharing a creative concept and no longer need to do the hard work. And I suspect this is an issue across creative projects. So actually have something to show before you seek people's opinions. And you risk getting upsetting feedback that you believe to be correct. Don't assume that it is. My internal voice is pretty fucking negative, and it tends to dismiss praise and accept criticism with open arms, regardless of how justified each is. You may be the same. Get a sympathetic second opinion, and try to trust your gut. You thought this project was worth starting. Why? But, yes, it's true, your idea might be no good. In which case, you've learned this faster than you would have, can stop wasting time and go on to the next project. Salvage what you can and move on. So, what I want you to take from this talk is, go, create stuff, show people before it's finished, brace yourself, absorb feedback, improve the stuff, show more people, create more stuff, rinse and repeat. It might not get easier, but you will get better. And the punchy ending line will come in a final, polished version of this talk. Thank you.